Welcome everyone to Small Biz Matters. We are here in a very exciting series of 5 interviews with our special guest, Nikki White from Wellness Business. Now, I'm super excited about these interviews. There are going to be 5 of them in total, and we're going to be focusing in on key elements to business growth. Now, I know what you're all saying. We're here on Small Biz Matters. We talk about the specifics, we talk about strategies, but I thought it was about time after about a year to look at the whole picture, really the big picture for businesses. And everyone's in that point of their business where they're starting to grow. They've learned a lot from this show, and I thought it'd be a good time to take stock and think about the bigger picture for all my listeners out there. So first of all, let me introduce Nikki. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And you are from Wellness Hubs, and you want to talk a little bit about your background, your expertise, and basically what it is that you specialise in.
Sure. Well, I run a couple of businesses. So one is Wellness Hubs Australia and one is my wellness business. So basically all I do is help wellness practitioners on the business side of their business, mostly because they're really great at whatever they're going to do, whether it's massage, Reiki, nutrition, it doesn't really matter. They're really great at what they do. They're just not so great at running their business. And that's only because nobody's ever shown them how to do it. So I've been in business for 10 years. I used to run a virtual assistant business. So I know what running a small business is all about. And then I also do a healing modality that I just did for my personal reasons. And then I can mix the two of the spirituality and the healing energies and the getting of that industry with my business knowledge. And it's just a really nice way to mix the two to help practitioners.
And you've got a background in administration as well. So you've got that, not only that the small business administration side, but the bigger corporate, medium-sized businesses too.
Yes, I've always been an EA or a PA in my corporate world.
So you've run the corporate business really, because that's, as far as I'm concerned, EAs and PAs, they run the place.
Yeah, they do. And I've also been small business managers. So there was a point there in between running my VA business and starting my business mentoring business that I actually went back and did some full-time work, and I actually managed small businesses.
Oh, wow.
And I did it so efficiently. I did myself out of 3 jobs in that period of time.
Because you got them up and running and then you had to leave.
Exactly. So they thought they were in huge need of somebody full-time, and actually when I went in and sorted out their business, I went, and you don't need somebody full-time.
You just need a receptionist.
You just really need somebody a couple of hours a day, and this is all they need to do.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
You're basically where I want to be in 10 years' time. So that's really exciting, and that's why we've brought Nikki in, because not only have you got the experience of working in as a specialist in an industry, running your own business in that industry, plus the knowledge of administration, plus the knowledge of supporting businesses through that admin process, which is exciting. So I guess for the next few weeks, what we're really hoping to do is talk through the process of running your own business. What is it? I guess what it is that businesses don't want to talk about.
Exactly. We're really going to talk about the things that people don't want to look at and don't always think as important. So some of the topics we're going to talk about is like implementation and working on your business, not in it. And they might seem really easy or obvious things for people, but actually when you get into the nitty-gritty of working in your business every day, they're things that you actually go, oh, I need to take a step back and go, I've got to look at all these things.
That's
so
right.
We're kind of going to have the discussion that people don't want to have, which is exciting.
Yes, and we can even, I'll be looking forward to discussing my business as well and talking about what I don't want to talk about. So it's funny, it's what we do best for others that we don't do so great for ourselves sometimes. So the first show we're going to talk about is implementation. So what that means, let's have a look at an overview of that. Can you give me an overview about what that implementation word means for small businesses?
Absolutely. A lot of people learning constantly and not implementing their learnings. So I see a lot of business owners who are serial learners. So I have to just go and learn this, or I have to go and learn that, but they actually don't implement it into their business.
So seminars, webinars, these professional development credits that they go and sit through and just go, somehow it's going to get in via osmosis.
Yeah.
But they're not actually doing anything about it when they get back to their business.
No, that's right. But also that comes down to is a lot of the training that they're doing is very much what they need to do, not how they need to do it. So the implementation stops because they know what they need to do and they've gone to this course or seminar and gone, right, so let's say, for instance, I have to have a marketing plan. but I don't actually know how to do that. So I guess in my mentoring programs, I really focus on the how to combat that, because I'm such a big believer in implementation. Because you are not going to be able to move your business forward if you don't actually implement the skills that you are learning to take your business forward.
And why would you spend all that money on all those education seminars and things and then not end up using the skills that you've been given?
Because it's fear as well. There's a lot of fear-based there around implementation.
Am I going to get it wrong? Am I going down the wrong path? Have I completely misunderstood what I've just forked out all this money for?
Yes.
Yeah.
And a big fear of, I think small business owners think that they have to get it right first time, or it has to be perfect. And that's so not the case. You know, I think it's also letting people know that implementation could be, okay, put your website up there, even if it's 70% completed. It's not like you're going to get this influx of people coming straight to your website on day one. And when you actually stick it out there, you can then start refining it. And people also don't realise that, you know, as your business evolves, you're going to have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different websites. You know, you're going to keep changing it. So the implementation stops because people are fearful of going, well, I have to put myself out there now. And that means people are going to judge me.
Yeah, that's right. But in actual fact, the reality is there's not hundreds of people banging on your door when you first start up. And that's what I think. It's very nerve-wracking, especially with startups. They already have a really long list of things that they must do.
Yes.
And that they have to do in order to be compliant. But it's implementing these other things that I think that they get quite overwhelmed with. And maybe the message here is you don't have to achieve everything within the first month.
And I just actually looked at the notes that we'd written about this topic, and I'd underlined the word overwhelm for that reason. And that is a big block when people are trying to implement, is that they actually have so much to do. Or let's say they've gone to all these courses and they know that they need to do all this stuff to help their business grow. What's the priority? So people get stuck in, well, how do I prioritise, or how do I manage my time to work in my business and on it, which is a different topic that we're going to discuss as well. But how can I prioritise my time? Because I've got to see clients and I've got to build my business and I've got to do, so what comes first? And I think that's a really, where people just go into complete overwhelm, meltdown, and then they don't do anything. So the lack of implementation is confusion and overwhelm.
And a really, really good way to get overwhelmed actually is to go to one of those helpful websites. Like, you know, I know that the ATO is trying their best at the moment to develop their small business website. But all you have to do is just go there and realise how much there is. And that's where the overwhelm kicks in, because they're not distinguishing between what you absolutely must do to start being compliant and be correct and everything's fine. Versus, okay, the next step, which is what I should do if I've got plenty of time and plenty of money, bit of money to throw at it, and putting things into priority. That is a really difficult thing for small business, particularly startups. So if we were looking at a typical guy, if we wanted to talk about implementation, let's imagine one of your clients, for instance, say a naturopath, has gone to this session that he's found in the city, which is all about a marketing plan, and he comes home. What's a good strategy to get the ball rolling when you've come away from one of those seminars in a practical sense to get that implementation started?
So I would say that my first priority would be to read back over the notes that I've taken, or go through the notes. I think a lot of times people, when they go to a seminar or something, they whiz through it so fast that they kind of, that's where the overwhelm comes. So just going back to the beginning of the seminar and going, okay, this is what they said first, this is what they said second, and then, you know, following those points through, because I'm pretty sure that my seminars give you a logical step. They don't just chuck everything on you. It's after the 2 hours or whatever that you're in complete overwhelm, because by then you've got everything. So then go back and what was the beginning? What was the first step? And I think,
so keep it chronological. That's really important, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that people get, like, let's take building a website, for instance. I see so many people with a to-do list that says, get website up. You know, that's ridiculous. Like, that isn't even a task. That's a full-on project. So what you need to ask yourself if you are in overwhelm is, what's the next step? Like, what is the next thing that I can do to move this big project on? So depending where you are in a cycle of a website, the next step could be source images or write homepage, not even write content, because even that's too big. So break that down again. What's that next logical step? Well, I have to write my homepage, then I'll write my services page, then I'll write my about me page. Or maybe it's right back at the beginning and source website designer. So things like that, really chunking out the steps so that the steps are something that you could do to move that project forward.
And it's logical. You have to step back and almost you have to take yourself out of your business and say to yourself, like if I was talking to a friend and giving them some advice, what would I say to do first? Because as you're in that overwhelmed space, it's very difficult to see outside your own space. So say, well, okay, what's the first step? Step one is you've got to keep it chronological. So that's why it's good. That's a really good tip to go back over your notes and actually read chronologically how they taught this to you. And maybe do you go over the notes and add some more to it from your own thinking?
It would really depend on what seminar you've been to as well and what kind of information they gave you. But I would just, every time I have a big project or I see people in overwhelm, I'm just like, let's just break it down. What's the next step? What's the next step? Because really you can only do what you can do. Otherwise, and I see people with the write a book. That's ridiculous as well. It's the same as do websites. So what do you have to do? So maybe you just have, the first step is, well, I'm going to, write out my chapter plan, and then I'm going to write chapter 1, and then I'm going to write chapter 2. So just really chunking it down really gets people out of the overwhelm.
Yeah, that's a very important part of implementation.
And then also learning to prioritise. And I think if you're going to say, well, how do you prioritise? What is the most important thing that you need to get done today? And really just look at it that way. So if you've got a list of 100 things to do, really just look at it and go, well, out of this, prioritise it and go, if I only could get 3 things done today, what would I do?
So we're always told as business owners that priority needs to be client work. And obviously, if you're a growing business and you're trying to get out there and keep your clients happy and make sure that you're doing that, how do you make time for the implementation side of things?
So what I do in my mentoring programs is I take all my clients through a whole session on time management. And what we actually do is we create a default diary so that you can see that you have a whole month where you can fit everything in. And what I actually get them to do is start with their personal stuff first. Most of the time
it's so last.
Yeah, I know. And we do, because we're running our own business and but I go, right, you wanted to run your own business, and most of the time we wanted to run our own business so that it fitted in with our lifestyle. So let's put our lifestyle into that default calendar first, and then let's build around it. So when I'm building a default calendar, it goes personal first, then it goes clients, and then it goes marketing, and then it goes admin. And that's not to say that that's the priority that you do it in. That's the priority that you plan it out in a full month. So let's look at something like looking at your finances. I would encourage people to do that on a weekly basis. And just do their bank recs in Xero or something so that they stay on top of it. But also so that they can see how much money they made that week, and so that they're actually...
And learning those accounting programs to get the most out of them. I mean, you've paid for a really powerful piece of software.
Yes.
And so many times you see business owners just going, I'll do it once a quarter, 3 days before BAS is due, and then I'll bust a gut to try and get it out there.
And there's the overwhelm.
Yes.
So let's say that if you, with your default diary, went, okay, on a Friday afternoon for half an hour between 2 and 3 or 2 and 2:30, before I pick up the kids at 3, I'm going to review my accounts. It is a half an hour job.
It is half an hour if you do it every week. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So really creating this default diary of knowing that there is enough time for you to get everything done takes that overwhelm out. Because as you're sitting there being with a client, for instance, you know that you've got time in your week or your month to get your finances done, your marketing done, or your admin done.
So when you're working with a business who is in overwhelm, that is really the first priority for you and for the business.
Absolutely.
Is to get everything chunked out.
And get it all out of their head as well.
Get it down
on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or however, like there's so many notes and there's Evernote and there's to-do lists, and it doesn't matter how they want to manage their to-do lists and get their stuff. But if you're in overwhelm, I can guarantee you're probably running around with 200 things in your head. And that could be, book in the pest inspector and get a present for Josie's friend's birthday on Saturday and get a haircut and take the kids to the dentist and do this for all my clients. It's personal and work, and you're constantly got all this stuff in your head. David Allen, who is a guy who has a program called Getting Things Done, has a quote that says, "Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them."
Your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. I love that. That's great. Keep the creative genius going and don't be a computer.
Yes. Use a computer for your to-do list or your notes or whatever it is.
It was actually something I was speaking to my husband about yesterday, just going, you know what? We pay for these pieces of software and it's like Einstein uses 90% of his brain and we all use 10%. We're paying for this software, we're probably only using 10% of the capacity when we could be using a huge amount, such as email management and that sort of thing.
Yes.
Use the tools that are in front of you. But then again, it's finding the time to do the courses, to learn the program, to implement. So priorities. Figure out what the most important thing is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if your priority is overwhelm and you are stressed and you need to find more ways to manage your time better, then go to a time management course and make that a priority.
And get a diary.
And
chunk out the
absolutely.
time.
Yeah.
Figure out what you're doing with each 2-hour block, say, for example, or even half-hour block if that's what it takes.
Yeah, even half-hour blocks. It doesn't really matter, and everybody's individual, and it really just depends. How many clients do you want to see each week? It also allows you to go, well, can I see that many clients? Do I have the time? Like some people come to me and go, well, I'm going to see 25 clients a week. And when you actually put it out there and you go, but, let's think that you have to have a break for lunch and you need to, let's say you're a massage therapist and you actually can't just do back to back because you've got to redo the towels and things like that. So when you actually chunk it out in a default diary, they suddenly go, oh, I can't see 25 clients a week. Like it's physically impossible.
You can, you just got to see them each for 11 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a really nice way to do that as well, to see overall, can I do this and can I actually achieve what I want to achieve and can I earn the money I want to earn and do I have enough time to do that? And if not, how can I then change my business so that I can earn money without swapping time for money because I don't have enough time? Or maybe you have to scale back your business. But conversely, it happens the other way. Some people go, well, I'm going to only see 8 clients. And then you go, well, actually, you could see 15. Look at your diary. Look how much time you've got.
Think about that time management.
Yeah.
We're going to take a quick break now on Small Biz Matters, and we'll be back after the break to talk a little bit more about implementation with our very special guest, Nikki White. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We're here with Nikki White, who is from My Wellness Business. Now, Nikki specialises in the administration and support of businesses in the wellness space, but of course, with your level of administration experience and small business experience, this is very versatile, and this can carry across to any industry, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the things that we specialise in, definitely.
Yeah. Everything we're going to talk about is not, it's just because I specifically work in that industry. What we're talking about in our next 5 shows is anybody can use it.
It can carry across. I know I'm sitting here listening and thinking to myself, I'm going to go home and do all this implementation, which is what we're talking about today. We're talking about implementation. Now, before the break, we were thinking about how important it is to take that education, that information that you gain. And this doesn't necessarily just come from webinars and seminars that you forked out good money for, but in fact, even a meeting with someone, even chatting to somebody and you've gone, picked up a couple of really great things and you've jotted them down on paper.
Yep.
Go home, reread those notes and get it a little bit more solidified and maybe expand on them a little bit in your own mind.
Yeah.
So those meetings are really important too. And even, meetings with your staff.
Yes.
Some things that they're coming back with as well, actually implement them. Very important to empower your staff when it comes to implementation. If they're giving you great suggestions, then make sure that you actually use that information. So talking about implementation and taking it to the next level, and we mentioned before the break about getting those ideas out of your head.
Yes.
Because everybody's overwhelmed and has lots of great thoughts.
Yep.
But getting the process out on paper. What are some suggestions you might have for that implementation process to get that myriad of ideas down on paper?
Sure. I'm a real paper person. There are tools, so there are things that you can use. I think there's OneNote, there's Evernote, so, there's apps and all that kind of stuff. So if you're a tech head and you're listening to this and you want to do it online, then totally go for it. You can sort your lists into projects, the whole bit. What I really like, I still love the pen and paper thing, mostly because I get huge enjoyment out of scribbling stuff out when I've done it, and then when I've completed a page, just ripping it off and chucking it in the bin. I really love of that.
Ceremonial lighter and actually burn it in the fireplace, that sort of thing.
It just feels really like, yay, I've done it, I've achieved it. Or, you know, if I've used up 3/4 of my to-do list and that's done, I'll just swap a few back into a new list and start again kind of thing. So I'm a big paper person, but to start, so let's say you haven't got a to-do list and you've got everything in your head.
Genius.
What I would suggest that you do is get like those little squares of paper. They could be post-it notes or just squares of paper, and drop down every one to-do thing per post-it note, let's say.
One per post-it note?
Yes. Because what we're going to do is to help you with your overwhelm is then once you've completely dumped your head, you've got them all on individual pieces of paper, and then you can start to categorize them. So let's say you've got 10 phone calls that you need to make, and you've got 10 pieces of paper that says call whoever, call whoever, call whoever. If you grouped those into calls, then you can suddenly go, okay, well, when I'm in the car and I'm driving for an hour, I could probably get away with calling, you know, maybe 8 of those 10 people. So by grouping them into what it is so whether it's email so-and-so, so you could group all those so that when you're in your email zone, okay, we're going to get that done. So thinking more so, and this helps with the prioritization that we were talking about before as well. And then conversely, then you might have, let's say, 15 post-it notes that are all part of the one project. So they could all go into a project folder or a project list and just go, these are my to-dos off this particular project, e.g. write a book, build a website, whatever it is.
Yeah, because that build a website list, is like that one point is a fairly broad topic.
Exactly. So when you start getting stuff out, or it could just be personal stuff, or, you know, when I'm out shopping stuff, like maybe it's buy toner, buy paper, buy this, when you put that all together, that's just a trip to Officeworks for personal, and, you know, maybe it's homework stuff for the kids, whatever. Or it's like I'm out on the road, so I'll get that done. So you can start to manage your time and your task prioritization grouped on what actually the task is.
I'm going to talk to the tech heads amongst us and give you a couple of suggestions about some apps that would work in that way as well. There's a great little app that I use called Pocket Lists, and that sits in my phone, and you can categorize each of those lists. So I've got a personal one, I've got business development, which is the phone calls that I want to make for new business, I've got client actions, I've got kids and family stuff. I've even got a little list about things that I want to do around the home.
Yeah, great.
And the great little thing about this pocket list is that you can give it a little icon, a little picture. And say, for example, as I think of things, I can just, on the run, I can just add them to the list. And again, you have the opportunity to tick those things off the list, and you just tick a box and it puts a line through it. So I agree, not as satisfying as actually drawing a line through it yourself with a pen and paper. I do find that a little bit, it's not as fulfilling.
But it helps you when you're out on the run.
It does, yeah. And you literally are in the car, not that you should be using your phone when you're driving, but you're in the car and you can't find a pen, or you're going to jot it down on a scratty bit of paper that's just literally going to disappear into thin air in 5 minutes' time anyway.
I use voice memos for that. So if I'm driving, I get a lot of ideas when I'm driving. Obviously, you just sit there and you kind of go, oh, I meant to do that, or all that. So I use voice memos for that. And then I will get back to my office and move the voice memos into my to-do lists.
Okay, excellent.
It is a bit of double up, but it's only because I love my personal list. But you could probably voice memo straight into your pocket notes. Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, you can just go, dictate and then bring on the next one as well. I'm trying to think of another one as well. And when you were mentioning putting all of those items into priorities and putting them into lists, so getting it all out of your head and go blah 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 blah, like literally brain dump, and then putting them into order. I was thinking of Excel. Really, because then you can move things around. But I think you have to be pretty fast and, pretty proficient at Excel to be able to feel comfortable with doing that. So that might not work.
I think if people listening still wanted something great that we haven't mentioned, just Google to-do list apps, and I'm sure there'll be 100 that come up.
Yeah, it's about 1 million. And then prioritise those according to what sort of feedback they're getting and how many ratings they've got and how many stars.
Exactly. And then remembering that this topic is all about implementation. So even though we've got them out of our head and on our to-do list, it's then still going, okay, well, I have to take action and do those things.
Yeah.
But you will find that because they're grouped into categories, they'll be a lot easier to implement and actually do. for instance, the calls or the shopping or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. And I think one of the problem is that people have a hurdle that they think that's actually sitting down and spending 5 or 10 minutes doing this is almost a waste of time. But they don't actually recognise it as being a really important business development tool to get these things out of their minds and just stopping and looking at the big picture and getting it all down and then prioritising it.
Absolutely. And if you want to think about implementation being really important, you actually can't implement something or do something when you're thinking about 100 different things. So, everybody talks about being in the moment and concentrating on the moment. It's the same when you're working. You want to be if you've got to write a proposal, you just want to be thinking about writing that proposal. You don't want to be sitting there writing a proposal going, oh, but I hope I don't forget this, or I hope I don't forget that, or, when am I going to get that done? That is not giving 100% to that proposal. So when we're talking about implementing and dumping it, the reason it's all comes together is because if you've got a clear head, you can focus on whatever you're doing 100%.
And you know that you've got this very specifically allocated time that you're going to be working on it, then you just go, right, I don't have to think about anything else because I'm actually getting this done, and everything else has a time slot that it's going to be done, much like what I'm doing right now.
And I've got my whole list sitting over there of everything that I need to do, so I don't have to think about it because it's all out of my head.
Yeah, excellent. Look, thank you so much for that today. It's been
welcome.
An excellent show today, Nikki. We're going to be talking next week about working on your business, not in it, and a little bit more about the broader look at why admin is so important, and the back end and the planning, and a little bit more about implementation as well, I suspect, because it'll all overlap. So today's show's all been at implementation. You can, of course, grab the podcast from the Boyd Office Management Services page, blogs and podcasts page, and on the Small Biz Matters website. Any questions or queries, you'd like to give us some feedback about the show, you can jump on the Triple H Mornings Facebook page as well as the Small Biz Matters Facebook page and let us know your thoughts. And of course, if you've got any questions for Nikki, pop them down and we can see if we can get them answered for you as well. Thanks for being on the show today, Nikki.
Thank you for having me.
And we'll see you all next week.
Okay, bye.